Hi, I'm Johnny from UltimatePaperMache.com, and my bug mask is it's getting bigger. I started looking at my real bug, and I knew I was going to be putting wings on it, and I'm thinking, well, why not just go ahead and make the whole bug instead of just a mask? So now it's really more of a sculpture than a mask. I guess you could call it a headdress. This is kind of how I do it, you know, when I'm not writing a book and I'm not trying to explain how to do something right. I just go ahead and do whatever feels like I want to do, which means I change my mind as I go along and I come up with different ideas as I'm working. And because of that little accident I had plenty of time to just kind of sit around and think about it. So now I'm making the whole thing. In order to add the back end to my bug, which I don't know if you can see them even, here we'll put it this way. I just used some aluminum foil and some hot glue, and now what I'm going to do, since it's an animal sculpture, more or less, I'm going to use the paper mache clay recipe that I use for all my animal sculptures. If you're not familiar with the paper mache clay recipe, you can find that in my book, Make Animal Sculptures with Paper Mache Clay. There's no bugs in this book, but there are also no experiments. This is actually like a course on how to sculpt using patterns on the inside of your sculpture so you can get them really nice. I did not use a pattern on the inside of my bug. I'm really experimenting on this, but I am using the paper mache clay recipe, and I had to go find the book because I always forget exactly how, what goes in it. So even though I've made paper mache clay like 100 times, I still have to go back to the book and get the recipe. I don't know why. Now I'm also going to be making wings for this fellow, and I think it was Eileen who suggested report covers, and I happen to have some in the house. I'm not spending any money on this project because it's really, the bug, it's not really worthy of a big investment. But I did have some of these in the house, and I scrunched it up like so. I'll need to cut it so that it's long enough. It'll be twice as long as this. And it'll come out to about here, which is perfect for my bug's wings. And the reason that I wrinkled it up is because I looked at those wings really, really close, and that's kind of what they look like. They don't look like flat plastic, like you get from like kitchen plastic wrap or something. They really do have a texture to them, even though you can see through the clear part of the wings. The wings are going to be made next time. I have to finish this part of it first, and then I get to start making my wings. So I'm going to go get started now. I've got my paper mache clay all made up. Got it in this bucket here. Now the first time I ever used the paper mache clay over just foil was when I made the little Tom Tin, the little Santa Claus guy. I'll put a link to it down below. I used the same recipe for him, and I just used foil for the armature instead of crumpled paper and masking tape like I have always done before, and it worked just fine. It stuck to the foil, and it even kind of hangs on because it gets kind of grabbed by all the indentations in the foil. So it works okay. You don't have to use the masking tape with foil if you don't want to. You would need to use the masking tape if you make your sculptures the way I did in the book using crumpled paper, because crumpled paper kind of uncrumples itself. You have to have the tape on there to keep it in shape. Now I did mention in a previous video that I was considering using up some of the epoxy clay that I had left over from making the unicorn and the bunny, but I didn't have enough. Now that I've decided to make the entire bug, I don't have that much left over. And I also needed kind of a texture on the skin, because the bug, if you look at him really, really close, he doesn't look like he's made out of plastic. He's not really totally smooth when you get up really close. It's not really his skin, it's his exoskeleton, and it does have a really fine texture, like an organic look to it. And the epoxy sculpt, although I absolutely love working with it, it has a tendency to be really smooth unless you go to a whole lot of trouble to recreate that texture. But the paper mache clay has texture already because of the paper in it. So it just seemed like it made more sense, really, to use this instead of the epoxy sculpt, and then I can use it for something else. I haven't really decided what to use it for. It should be used for something that goes outside since it's waterproof and this stuff is not. So I'll go ahead and finish this guy up. It's just a matter of, you know, putting it over the armature in a real thin layer. I like to use about 1/8 of an inch. Okay, this is another experiment. Completely ignore it. I went down to the basement to get my gloves and I found this on the shelf. It's just concrete bonding adhesive. It's acrylic fortifier. Basically, I think it's just a thin version of PVA glue. And I'm using it to smooth this off. The joint compound that I used this time was from Walmart. And although I really like using it, it works just fine, and it's not DAP. DAP joint compound really doesn't work with this recipe. But it was a lot juicier than usual. I added twice as much flour as the recipe calls for, and it was still really wet. So I'm just smoothing off the top of it with this stuff. I'm pretty sure I could do exactly the same thing. In fact, I intended to try this exactly the same thing with a mixture of like half and half water and PVA glue. I don't think that there's any reason at all to use that concrete reinforcer, but I thought I would just, you know, grab it and give it a shot and see what happened. It is helping me smooth this off. Basically what it does is it makes my glove slide over the top of the paper mache clay without being grabbed by the stickiness of it. That's really the only reason that it helps smooth things off. You never want to put too much water on it. I mean, obviously it's already pretty juicy because the joint compound was so wet. The more water you add, the longer it's going to take to dry. Obviously, this is going to take at least 2 days to completely dry. And here on the front, where I actually had the plaster cloth over the original clay sculpture, I'm just kind of skimming on just enough. In fact, I'm pulling off right now most of that paper mache clay. I'm getting it really wet in this particular spot because I only want to cover up the plaster cloth texture. I don't want to cover up all those lines and things that I created in the original clay. So I'm just taking it all off, and then I'll smooth it off. You wouldn't actually need to put, if it was all plaster cloth or just plain old paper mache, you wouldn't need to use the paper mache clay at all. You could just use a gesso to smooth it off. But because I had that tinfoil on the back, I did need to use something to cover that up, because obviously you have to have something a little bit stronger than just crumpled foil. This dries really, really hard, almost like plastic. People ask me how long it will last once you've created your sculpture. And I've been using this, I think I started out 2008, making things with paper mache clay. That's when I first came up with this recipe. And the things that I've made with it are still exactly the same as they were. In fact, my piggy that's over there on the shelf, I don't think you can see it right now, he was made from my book on how to make animal sculptures with paper mache clay back, I think that was written in 2011. And he's been moved to several different houses. We've been in really dry area, almost high desert in eastern Oregon. And then we've come here to Minnesota, which is a whole lot damper than I thought it was going to be. I didn't realize. Very humid here sometimes. And there's been no damage to them at all. As long as you keep it sealed, it will last forever. So, you know, don't keep it in the bathroom. Don't take it outside. You know, that sort of thing. It should last for a very, very long time. Just one last swipe with the gloves to smooth that off. I'm not going for museum grade here. This is a bug for Halloween. You know. There's a limit to how much work one should go for that sort of thing, but I think it's going to look pretty cool when he's painted, especially once I get those wings on. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about that. So that's all I'm going to do today. Turn him around here very, very gently. Well, you can see all that foil is all covered up. Smoothed it off reasonably well. I might hit it with a sanding sponge later on. I would do that outside. You always have to use a mask when you're sanding anything, especially anything that has joint compound in it, so I might do that later. But what I really want to do is put those wings on there. The wings will start right about here, and they'll be twice as long as the bug itself. His nose actually covers the mouth when it's sitting on the mannequin correctly, so if I do use it for a mask, I will make slits right here on that line across the top so that I can see out. Now, in addition to his wings, he's also going to have 6 legs, and he has 2 rather long whiskers coming out of these little bumps right here. So that's going to be really fun too. So I'm done with him for today. I'm going to let him completely dry all the way through, and it's going to take at least 2 days. I'll put it in front of the fan, and as soon as that paper mache clay is absolutely rock hard, then I'll go ahead and add my wings. I'll probably need to drill some holes in there. The wings are going to need some wire around the outside. His legs are going to be made with wires, and his little whiskers, and so I'm going to be needing to drill some holes in there and actually attach those wires really, really well on the inside once I get it done. But that shouldn't be too hard. Making the wings is going to be the exciting part, so we'll do that next time. It's going to be at least 3 days, probably more, before I get to do that. So in the meantime, go check out all of the other videos I've got out on my YouTube channel. There's a ton of really cool stuff. Most of them have nothing whatsoever to do with bugs. And then come visit me, ultimatepapermache.com. I'll see you there.